1 through 14. And the page numbers are in your bulletin, so I'll help you find it quickly. The hand of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. Are you finding it? Okay. Ezekiel. Oh, does it say Ezekiel? Okay. Yeah, you typed that wrong, Deb. Go back to your keyboard and fix that. Okay. We're in Ezekiel. We're talking about these bones are going to what? Going to walk around again. Yeah, there's a spiritual about that. Okay. We'll start it again, because now you found out where you're really supposed to be. The hand of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. You found it? Ezekiel. Can you find Ezekiel? It's 37, chapter 37. 37 of Ezekiel. Ezekiel. We're learning new things this morning. We're going to try it one more time, then we're going to quit. Did you find it, Leah? It's either on 1345 or what? 857. Okay, let's go now. The hand of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley, and it was full of bones. He led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones in the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. And he asked me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I said, O sovereign Lord, you alone know. And then he said to me, Prophesy to these bones and say to them, Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter into you, and you will come to life. And I will attach tendons to you, and make flesh come upon you, and cover you with skin. And I will put breath in you, and you'll come to life. And then you will know that I am the Lord. So I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together, bone to bone. And I looked, and the tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, Prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, Son of man, and say to it, This is what the sovereign Lord says. Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe into these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath entered them, and they stood up on their feet, a vast army. And then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say, Our bones are dried up, and our hope is gone. We are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, This is what the sovereign Lord says. O my people, I'm going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. And then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. This is a vision. It's not reality. I mean, this didn't really take place. You've all had some type of a vision, probably one time or another, or maybe you want to call it dreams. Some dreams shake you, other dreams make you laugh, other dreams you wonder where they came from. The bones were dried up. If you can imagine the sight he was seeing, these were dead bones. Have you ever seen them? Ever seen a bunch of bones of human? Anybody ever seen a bunch of bones of humans? Probably not. So a few have, but it's not a usual sight that you get to see. And so God has Ezekiel, who is a prophet. He's a man of God. And this dream that he's having, God is saying, now you walk down and up and back and forth amongst these bones. And you'll notice that they're all dry, they're brittle, and there's no life in them. Many years ago, when I was much younger, I'll tell you a story about bones that I had. My great-grandparents were buried in a cemetery that had turned into a cow pasture, and our family decided that they should be disinterred and brought to another cemetery where their son was. So I was part of the disinterment. So we took shovels, I had to do it by hand, took shovels and picks and went down early in the morning and stayed there for most of the day because we had to open 2 graves, my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother. Back in those days when they were buried, there were no vaults. So all that's left of you fits in a box 24 by 24. That's all the bones that was left after all those years. And so we took the bones of my great-grandfather and the bones and skull of my great-grandmother, put them in these wood boxes, 24 by 24. It was late in the year. It was late in the fall. It was in late November. So we didn't get a chance to bury them till the following spring. And I had them in the back trunk of my car because they'd never ridden in the car. Well, they hadn't. There was no cars when they died. And this is a true story. In fact, I got slides of it if you ever want to see them. I had to put winter tires on my car. I took it down to the garage and left it. And the owner of the garage had to put the summer tires in the trunk. And he called me immediately and he said, "Mr. Reese, I don't know if to call the police or the medical authorities or what, but you've got 2 boxes of bones of humans in your trunk. And we don't know what to do." I said, "They're my great-grandparents." "Oh my God," he said, "I can't believe it." He said, "I've been in business for 20 years and I've never seen anything like this in my life." He never forgot it. He's still alive, and every time I see him, he says, "What'd you do with those bones?" Well, they're reburied. They didn't jump around. They were dead. That's what Ezekiel experienced. There was no life in the bones. God says to Ezekiel, "Do you think, Ezekiel, these bones can live?" No, they can't. And God said, "You know what? If you do something," God says this to all of us today, "if you'll do something about what's going on, it can change." Do you know that? See, so many times we get, "Oh, it's all over." We look down, they're dead. And you say this about a lot of situations in life, not just dead bodies, but things die in our life. Marriages die, and all kinds of things die in our life. And so many times we look at it and say, "It's dead. There's no hope. It's all over." And God said to Ezekiel, "What are you going to do, Ezekiel?" "I don't know what to do." Breathe on those bones. You remember in the book of Genesis? What did God do? Let me say it, do it. Wind is a sign of the Holy Spirit. And when the wind comes, the Spirit comes, then life comes. And he said, "If you will breathe on these bones, Ezekiel, the Spirit will come back in there, and the bones will take on flesh. They'll take on sinew. They'll take on flesh. And guess what? There'll be life again." So Ezekiel blew on the bones, and he saw the sinew begin to come on, and he saw the flesh come on, but there was no life. He said, "Breathe again, and let life come into the bones and the flesh and the sinew," and they begin to move around and dance. If you break a hip or break a leg, what happens? You go down. And you know what? If it really is broken bad, you can't get up. Somebody's got to come and help you. You need help. And God says, that's when I come. When you go down, I come down with you to lift you up inwardly. He'll use other people to do it physically, outwardly, but he lifts you inwardly, because I don't care how much you're lifted physically, it will never do the inward job. You've got to have God in here. God's not just out there. He's in you. See, I think we forget that many times. Where's God? Right here. He lives here. He came to a body. When you were born, the minute you came out of the womb, life came into you. God's life. Yes, you were physically alive. There's no doubt about that. But God's life came into your inner spirit. Whether you ever acknowledge it or not, it doesn't matter. He's there. And once you begin to talk to him through prayer and begin to say, "God, I need this and I need help," and so on, he comes alive. Because the Spirit is always present. So here we are, community, Columbus Community Church. You know what? When you get to heaven, do you know what's going to happen? God's not going to ask you to recite the Apostles' Creed. He's going to say, "Did you learn it in Columbus or not?" He's not going to ask you to do that. He's not going to ask you to quote the doctrine of this church. He's not interested in that stuff at all. Not at all. Did you know that for the first 400 years after Christ resurrected, do you know what they called followers of Christ? They didn't call them Christians. That was not used until 400 years after the resurrection. What did they call the followers of Christ? Anybody know? No? People of the way. People of the way. W-A-Y. That's what they called all the followers of Christ for 400 years. They had no doctrine. They had no Apostles' Creed. They had no church. And they flourished like the sunshine. They just grew and grew and grew because they had within God. And they let that God within them flow into everybody else. See, that's how they got along. We don't do that at all times. We don't let the God that lives in here flow through us to other people. How do I know that? Because I'm human. And all you got to do with some of us, including me, is stand against me when I don't want to be stood against, and you won't hear God. Not normally. But I want God to come through more and more. And that's what he wants to do. That was a secret of the early believers. They let God come through them to one another. When somebody said, I don't like you, they didn't say, I'm going to slap you. They didn't do that. No. They said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Let's try to work it out. See, that's how they literally, it's written in history. That's how they lived in the way that they call themselves. They were God for one another. And that's what he's asking our community to do week after week and day after day, is to be God for one another in our fellowship. And it's not easy, but it's very possible because the Spirit enables us to do that. See, when you lose your job, and that can happen at times. Some of you have gone through that. It's an awful feeling to say, as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, you're done. Whew. All these things race in front of you. What am I going to do? How am I going to pay the bills? And blah, 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 blah. That's when God says, I'm in the bones. I'm there. I can bring life to where you think everything has died. Or when the economy goes sour, and we've all experienced that, and things go backwards financially, and we say, what am I going to do? I'm there. Or when the marriage falls apart, and we say, it's all over. God says, I'm here. Let me breathe into you. Or when the bridge goes out, where you have to drive to work every day, and you got to go 4 miles out of your way until the bridge is fixed. God is there. He'll take care of you. These bones, when you give up, do not die. God says they're still alive because I'm part of it. God never promises, I won't let that happen. God never says that to any of us. I'll tell you something, I'm never going to let that happen to you. He doesn't say that, does he? But he says when it happens, the Spirit will enable you to walk through it. See, there's the difference. The Spirit will enable you to walk through it. So God gives life. God restores life. And he never says it's over. He never says that. It's the wind of the Spirit that he's talking about in our scripture this morning. It's a life-giving force, and it comes not from within us. It comes from God above, and God is with it. And so this morning we're breathing God's Spirit. I gave you that exercise at the beginning of church. When you breathe in and hold it, you only can hold it so long. But when you let it out, what a wonderful feeling it is when it goes out. You say, that felt so good. And then you take in another one and out it goes. And you feel so, that's God breathing into you. God breathes into you. And then he breathes out, and he breathes in, and he breathes out. And he says, you're going to make it. I'm going to enable you to get through this. God is all around us this morning. So as long as you have God, my friends, you know what? You have life. That's the way it works. Don't let that ever change.